Old school is going to take you to school. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the 229th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. If you missed last week, you missed the man with a great beard, Andrew O'Brien, the publicity guy, Army veteran, Texan, all-around good dude, smart dude when it comes to getting more publicity than you deserve. Check him out if you need to make the phone ring. You can get the notes, listen in at thesaleswhisperer.com/session 228. Today I'm fired up. We have copywriting legend John Carlton. If you do not know who he is, you're going to be glad you listened today. He is kind of, sort of an unsung hero. Right? He's not out there putting himself way out there. He's not using the publicity guy, let's say. But he is a super successful author, speaker. He has his own podcast. He just lives a pretty chill life by design. But he was there back in the day. Old school direct mail copywriting. And if you don't think that stuff still applies today, listen up. But we get into how to use the internet, right? He was an early guy on selling online, creating landing pages, video sales pages. You know, people make the mistake of thinking that this time it's different, right? This is unique. You need to go read Ecclesiastes, right? There's nothing new under the sun. The internet is just a different medium. Okay, but we've gone through bubbles like this when the radio came out, right? When the printing press came out, when TV came out. This is just another medium. And we get into human nature and do people ever really change? And do old school tactics still work? And you'll be surprised at what we cover. So you are in for a treat. And like I mentioned last week, I've been read this book, Pendulum. Still trying to schedule Michael Drew. Been having some chats online. But he and Roy Williams wrote this book talking about the generational cycles, how society moves through predictive stages and phases, and how we are approaching in 2023 will be the peak of the we generation as we move back towards that. And the interesting thing is, as we move towards this common good, right? All for one and blah, 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 we actually start to move into the witch hunts, right? Things move into obligation when we take the we generation too far. And these guys literally go back thousands of years, but literally the witch hunts, the Salem witch trials, the witch hunts in Europe, in the Middle Ages, all you can see them peak at the same 80-year intervals when society peaks in the we generation. They give examples as well of, Stalin and Hitler and even Joseph McCarthy were at their strongest right around the peaks of a we generation. And when you know how society as a whole is thinking and how they're going to think, it helps you understand how to market to them. It helps you understand, helps you make sense of the world. If you find yourself asking, what the heck's going on in this country, right? Why do we hate each other online? Why are we so hostile towards one another? And Roy and Michael talk about that in times like this, as we're approaching this we generation peak of the pendulum. The us versus them is a very good tactic. It's an efficient tactic at building your brand, at getting your word out. And the fact that our politicians and even some business leaders are good at that, it's not an accident. Okay, these people have big money, big brains, big consultants helping them figure out how to get the word out. And I have studied under and with many top consultants who have coached and consulted with presidents. I can think of 3 that I know personally and have worked with personally that have consulted with presidents and their staffs and their campaigns on how to create their slogans and their taglines and how to get the word out and how to actually suppress votes, right, in regions where maybe their opposition is strong, and how to increase the votes as well. So none of this is on accident. Things are not just happening coincidentally. There are big powers with big money pulling big levers, okay, in big government, in big business, across the board. Like they say in poker, if you don't know who the chump is at the table, it's you. Okay, so if you think things are going on by accident, by just mere coincidence, you're the chump. Stop being a chump. Understand what's going on around you. You know, Facebook is free. Gmail is free. Flickr is free. Twitter is free. What then is the product? It's you and me. Okay? When Instagram and Snapchat and all these things are free, that means they're getting our demographics. You know, I'm buying ads right now on very precise demographics, job titles and interests, and what magazines somebody likes, and what sports do they like, what's their gender, what's their age group, do they have a high school diploma, do they have a college degree, do they have advanced degrees? I can narrow this down so tight to get my ad just in front of the right people. And all that information is available because we give it up for free. Okay? So you give that information on these social media accounts. So you are the product, okay? So you need to understand what role you contribute in all this, and how people are marketing to you. And you know what? How can you use that to market yourself? And I've always said, you know, you owe it to your customer. If you are truly the best, then you owe it to them to do the best job to get the word out. So the marketplace has knowledge of you and access to you. Okay, because if they don't know who you are, they can't buy from you. So are you leveraging this information in books like Pendulum, like this podcast we're about to get into with John Carlton? I mean, this is a smart dude, okay? He's going to share some great experience that is both historical, right, and proven, but also current. He is still in the game. We're going to talk about how he has been and how he will be dividing his time between social media, between direct mail, between email, okay, between blogging. So we get into that. And so, you know, John is not some old dinosaur, okay. He's got gray hair, but he is young at heart, and he still has his finger on the pulse, okay. So listening in to content like this is a good thing. Your competition isn't doing it. They're watching cat videos and arguing, you know, over Trump versus Obama. And while I like having those arguments from time to time, you do have to go out and make a sale, right? You got to make a difference. And is that making a difference in your life, your family's lives, or those of your customers? And of course, the answer is no. All right. So thanks for listening to this. And remember, I've got a new sponsor, Jay and his crew over at VA Staffer. If you go to thesaleswhisperer.com/VA Staffer, stands for virtual assistant. So thesaleswhisperer.com/VA Staffer. He's got a cool offer for you. 4 free hours, and then $100 off the setup if you decide to go with them. So we'll talk about that at the end. But now let's bring on Mr. John Carlton. John Carlton, I think Kevin Rogers calls you the most ripped off copywriter alive. Welcome to the Sales Podcast, man, all the way from Reno, Nevada. How the heck are you?
I'm doing very well. It's raining cats and dogs here, and looks like continued winter storm warnings for my foreseeable future, which is good for me because that means I'm going to be at the desk working rather than running around.
You won't be distracted, huh?
No, not at all.
And that means maybe California, maybe some of that snow will come down and give us some water. So, hey, I appreciate you bringing on the weather.
I'll do my best.
So, man, normally I ask people to tell us a little bit about themselves, but I feel like with your history, I just want to get into some of the meat, and we'll probably pull out some of the stories. But, I mean, in a nutshell, you've 30-year career, 40-year career as a copywriter and in marketing?
The elevator chat, more or less, the quick story is that I was a slacker until I was in my early 30s. And I had an epiphany that no one was going to help me get my act together. And if anything was going to happen, I was going to be responsible for it. So I kind of sat down and stopped slacking and, working a couple of years at bad jobs, some of the worst jobs in that exist, and became a freelance copywriter with no idea how it was supposed to be done. Just kind of started figuring it out on my own. Accidentally stumbled into the jet stream of the direct response community at the time, which were guys like Jay Abraham, Gary Halbert, Gary Benzavinga, guys like that. And just kind of accidentally for the next 30 years or so, maybe it is 40 years now. I haven't added it up lately. Just worked my way into an inside position in the direct response advertising world and have been a guru since 2001. Where I changed from writing for clients to teaching entrepreneurs and writers how to get their act together and how to deliver better copy, get better results, fix their problems. I've been mostly a fixer for the last 15 years, I'd say. People come to me with broken dreams, lives, businesses, and I fix it up and send them off back into the world, refreshed and replenished.
So since Pulp Fiction came out around that time, a little earlier, but did they get the idea of the fixer from you, or did you get it from Pulp Fiction?
That's right. That was
Pulp Fiction was like 95, wasn't it?
No, it was a little earlier than that, I believe. But yeah, it was. I can't think of not De Niro. Who was the actor? The other guy.
Kilstein, Harvey.
No. The guy who was the fixer was the guy who played the bad lieutenant. And this is horrible podcasting, but I can't remember his name for some reason. Anyway, he was the guy that came in.
Winston Wolfe. I Solve Problems. Harvey Keitel.
Harvey Keitel, right? Yes, the whole idea of the fixer. No, I didn't get that. The fixer is actually a term that goes back into old school advertising, marketing, and selling. That was one of the things that I learned early on in my career, by the way, which was there was a lot of the books we now take for granted in advertising and marketing today were out of print back in the early 80s. And the entire direct response advertising community was in decline. There were only a few people like Gary Halbert and Jay Abraham keeping the flame alive, so to speak. Now it's dominant in online marketing especially. But back then it was a secret club kind of. And one of the reasons I got into it was I discovered early on that old school advertising methods worked better than the new stuff, which was trying to focus on branding and useless stuff that didn't ask for the sale, that avoided offending people, that really was milquetoast advertising. And I learned, like I say early on, that the old stuff really worked. So my books that I read were by dead authors. Claude Hopkins, My Life in Advertising and Scientific Advertising from the 1920s. John Caples, Tested Advertising Methods from I believe the late 50s or early 60s. And that was the stuff that worked. That was my secret weapon to become quickly one of the top freelance writers in the Los Angeles area down there. And one of the things that I did when I was pursuing this old school stuff was find old school salesmen, whether they were physically old or not, didn't matter. It was what they were doing. They were streetwise. A lot of these guys, Gary Halbert and Jay Abraham, again, not to dwell on them too much, they each did door-to-door salesmanship, apprenticeships. Gary wouldn't eat that night if he didn't sell encyclopedias during the day. He'd sleep in his car. The tactics they learned were hard won, face to face, human to human, and translate very well to the written page and ads in papers, to online and email and websites. Anytime it's a human-to-human interaction, the old school stuff just runs circles around anything that they're trying to reinvent. When they're trying to reinvent how to do sales, the most common thing that's been ticking me off in the last few years is a lot of so-called gurus are out there telling entrepreneurs they can, quote, sell without selling, unquote, which is ludicrous. But it's something that a lot of people want to hear, and they'll pay a lot of money to learn how to sell without selling. The irony is always that in order to sell their courses and coaching programs on selling without selling, they have to use old school hardcore salesmanship to get people to pay for these things. Right. So it's the hypocrisy is deep as it's always been. And the people who actually know anything about advertising and sales remain small, although more influential now that there are so many people out there willing to share either on blogs or through courses or books. So it's a wonderful time to be in anything that revolves around sales, because you can get some really good expertise very easily and often for free.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to ask, how things translate today, because I always take the role of the devil's advocate. I've got a listener. It's like, okay, great. So you did some selling in the 80s and you read books from the 20s and the 50s. And like, come on, dude. That doesn't work now. This is all ClickFunnels, self-liquidating offers, social media. Why am I even listening to this episode?
I invented a lot of the stuff that's happening now online. I mean, a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but in 2002, web marketing, online marketing was in its infancy. Excuse me. And there were no functioning websites that were very good. There wasn't very much direct response. And I wrote a book called Kick-Ass Copywriting Secrets of a Marketing Rebel. And I wrote it because I started speaking to large crowds of entrepreneurs at Dan Kennedy events and also the other events. I was even going to real estate events and talking. And I needed something to sell, so I wrote this book. That became the Bible for a lot of people who needed to learn to write copy very, very quickly online. What I did was I just went to actually my nephew's teacher at school was a so-called not web expert, but he's supposed to know about the web. So he cobbled together the first website I had. This is before any of the things that are out there now. There was no launch theory. There was no email aggregators. There was no. The tech was very, very primitive. So I just had him slap up a sales page that actually took people back offline again, because merchant accounts were hard to get for online marketers. In fact, impossible to get at that time. And around 2003, 2004, that shifted, and there was a paradigm shift. And what happened was those of us who were dabbling online, using email a little bit to bring people in, but always taking people back offline. I was on the phone with my father, who was 88 at the time, I think, and he told me he was actually getting his medications online from New Zealand. Wow. And that had happened like last week. And I realized, bam, that paradigm has shifted. And I actually went to Bank of America. They gave me an online merchant account, and I started doing everything online. So I hung out with those guys who were coming up through the ranks. I was in the in-group that started doing launches, that started doing affiliate marketing, and all this stuff started snowballing. So even though I'm a dinosaur and a geezer and an old guy, I was there during the time when all of this stuff that is now taken for granted as far as the tools you can use was being invented. There was no Google AdWords back then. People tend to forget how recent a lot of this stuff is. And, of course, that's one of the problems we're having online. It's still in its infancy. Web marketing is a teenager with all the problems that teenagers bring to the table, the impulsiveness, the lack of security and clear-headed thinking, and a lot of things. So I am almost entirely online. I made my living writing for direct mail and print advertising, and I was among the first to start dabbling in infomercials on TV, which led to the principles that we realize that it doesn't matter what the medium is. The message always stays more or less the same. So it doesn't matter if you're writing for an ad in the local Los Angeles Times, or you're writing an email, or you're writing for a half-hour infomercial on late-night television, or whether you're on the radio. The medium is just a vehicle for your message. So there's nothing magical about the web. It just multiplied the number of people you can reach, and it is also the fact that email and a lot of stuff is seen as free or very inexpensive. The testing you can do very quickly in markets on using AdWords. For a few $100, you can get information that used to take 6 months to a year and $100,000 offline. You can get that same information just in days and weeks now. You can sell people with an email list. You can go to them, and it costs you essentially nothing except the maintenance of your list. And this has kind of drugged people into thinking that this brave new world requires brave new ways of approaching things. And my philosophy has always been salesmanship hasn't changed since the first caveman traded up to a better cave in exchange for a slab of mastodon beef. It's the same principles. You appeal to the primitive brain. You appeal to the cerebral cortex, which is the modern brain. You appeal to the emotional side of things. You present rational arguments that are emotionally processed, and all of that. None of that has changed throughout the history of mankind. And the introduction of technology certainly has not dented the way that humans interact. In fact, what we're experiencing lately with with trolling and a lot of the problems that people are having online and social media and fake news and stuff like this, none of this is new. This is humans reacting to a new resource, to a new way to do their nastiness, to confront their own dark sides by taking others down. And I had a degree in psychology back in the early 70s. I actually got a BA in it. I wasn't able to use it in my life, of course, until I became an advertising writer and started realizing that, wow, my love is not deep psychology, but pop psychology. I like the stuff you can read in Psychology Today and the studies and the demographic examinations of how people actually act in real life. That's the stuff that I follow, because that translates to the job I have, which is influencing people to say that, you know what, yeah, I do believe you and I trust you and I think that what you've got is actually pretty good, and you know what, I'm going to give it a shot, and here's my credit card. So that's as far as I need to take them. I need to gain trust and get them to take out their credit card, which is not an easy thing to do. And anyone who tells you how to sell something, who hasn't actually made a sale or hasn't managed the human element in any kind of marketing endeavor, where people are emotionally fickle, where trust is paramount to making the final decision. And like I said, Wes, I was just reading your post on rude salespeople actually getting results according to a number of tests. That's not a surprise to old school salesmanship, because we know about the takeaway. We know about the cognitive dissonance going on in every single prospect's head. They want something, but there's battling voices inside their head. Their prime fear is being taken as a fool, to make a mistake that then their neighbor, their wife, and their ornery brother-in-law, who they don't agree with on anything, is able to say, what an idiot you are for having done that. That is their biggest fear in life. Right. The money becomes secondary. I tell people, you want to understand human trust, try to get a friend of yours to go see a movie that you just saw that you like, that you know he'd like, and try to talk him into going and seeing the movie. And, of course, most people think, well, that should be easy. And it's actually not. When you do this, you will see natural human resistance rise in its ugliest form. And people will stubbornly not go see a movie because you told them how to do it, even though they're friends of yours. even though they know they would like it. It might have even been on their list, but it will make them less likely to do it if you use the logical way of doing it. If you use a backdoor approach, saying, I don't think you really like this movie. It's a Quentin Tarantino, and it's kind of, well, wait, I love Quentin Tarantino. Well, this one has a lot of violence. I love his violent movies, and, you come in what we call the side door. Gary Halbert and I used to talk about how New Yorkers, who he had spent a lot of time with, and I have a lot of peripheral contact with, New Yorkers, like to pretend that they are hardcore, that they can't be fooled, that you can't put anything over on them because they lead lives of intense human interaction in a very vibrant city that a lot of stuff going on. But old school salesmen know the simplest way to do is to come in the side door. A rookie salesman would try a direct frontal approach on somebody who is skeptical and ornery and a what was the term you used? A skeptic, a contrarian. Mm-hmm. But the easiest way for a salesman to come in is through the side door. You don't make a frontal assault. You use a little Machiavellian art of war strategy, and the takeaway is one of the best examples. But that's all old school stuff. So you come in and you say, you can't have this. What do you mean I can't have? I can have anything I want. I got the money. No, not this. This is and just going through that stuff. And it's wonderful to have those tools at your disposal. When you're dealing with large swaths of humanity. A lot of people think that a 300,000 name list online is going to do better than a smaller list. And I remind people that I made my first small fortune with an email list of 300 people. Mm-hmm. I was able to bring $1,000 to $5,000 from those people by giving them what they needed, what they wanted, and do it in a way that was influential. And the lifetime value of them is still paying off for me, although my list is now, I think, around 20,000 or so.
Right.
But the size of the list is irrelevant to an old school salesman. He's not wowed by numbers. He's wowed by results. Right. How many buyers you got on that 300,000 name list? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, we're not selling a lot right now. Oh, okay. Identify the 10 sales, the 10 people ready to buy on that. You're going to be better off than continuing to cater to those 300 or those 299,000 that are not buying.
Right. It's interesting you bring up Sun Tzu. I was talking about that this morning in a group that I'm in, and I've got a 19-year-old son that's too smart for his own good. And we were talking about
dangerous age.
He's extremely book smart, but he's got to learn a little bit in life. But he's learning. But it was a year ago we were mentioning. I've got Sun Tzu sitting right here on my desk. And he's like, why would I read that? I mean, it's 2,500 years old, right? It doesn't pertain today. And I was like, yeah, good luck with that. And I'm not going to force him. I'm not going to argue. He said, yeah, you're probably right, son. And so I'm waiting.
He's the apple that fell off the tree. So what were you like at 19?
I'm very strong-willed still. But I do think I was always open to ideas. Right? I didn't stuff the book in his face and say, you better read this before dinner. He saw it, and I said, that's a damn good book. I said, if you want to understand war, strategy, manipulation, discussion, sales and marketing, you ought to read that book. He's like, oh, I don't need to read anything that old.
You knew how you could have. Yeah, you knew how you could have got him to read it, so you could have said, sorry you saw this. This is one book that you can't read for another few years.
Yeah, well, up until that point, he was pretty open to hanging out and talking with me. So I didn't think I had to use a trick to show him what good things exist in this world. But hey, now I know.
That's another thing I picked up from another old school salesman who was actually my age, but he was steeped in the old school stuff, and he did a lot of face-to-face selling, and he was an early pioneer in direct response on television and also online. And he recalled a story. This is a quick story. He was doing door-to-door sales. I think it might have been insurance. I'm not sure. And he had a pitch that he stuck to. And one time he sat down, he had a very good time with the prospect, and they sat there, and the prospect was ready to buy, had the checkbook open and the pen hovering over the checkbook. Over the exposed check in his checkbook. And the salesman was so confident of the sale that he left the pitch and he started talking about other things. And pretty soon he noticed the pen was gone and then the checkbook was gone. And the next thing he knew, he's being ushered out politely, with, hey, it was great talking with you. And he went on. He didn't have the sale. He had varied from the pitch, from the proven way of doing it. Right. And the lesson, of course, is that overconfidence in somebody who makes a win anywhere is lethal in a lifetime of entrepreneurship. One of the biggest problems I have with counseling entrepreneurs is they come to me and they say, I was really, I made my elegant, simple idea made me a lot of money. Now I'm going to pivot over to this other market and conquer that one too. And I say, well, good luck, but you're starting from scratch in this new market. No. I have the green thumb. And they get demolished. So it's human nature to get overconfident and start shortcutting the process. Yeah, it's trying to sell without selling.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up too, because it's I tell people the only difference between a referral and a cold call is the opening. You still. Right. Sure, it can be a super good warm referral. Maybe they're totally ready to buy it. But usually it's just like, hey, I was told I should talk to you. I trust such and such. What you got? And you can't lower your guard. You still have to follow the process because it's not done till it's done, right? That check isn't done. And maybe he even wrote that check and then he lets you get out the door. Then he calls the bank and stops payment on it just because he wanted to get you out the door.
Yep.
Which I tell people, I've got the ABCDE system, right? It's attract, bond, then close, but then it's deliver and endear. And, because the money is just the midway point, right? I mean, you still have to over deliver. You have to get them singing your praises to bring more people like them back to the front of the process. I mean, would you agree?
Oh, yeah. All true. That's why one of the big things that Jay Abraham brought to the fore, which was from the 50s and the 40s, was the idea of the lifetime value of a customer. I don't know if you know about the what's the guy's name? The Lazy Man's Way to Riches. I can't think of his name right now. The Lazy Man's Way to Riches was essentially a new version of Think and Grow Rich. It was talking about goal setting and stuff. But the ads ran for years in newspapers, and the guy behind it was a salesman.
Joe
Carbo was a respected Hall of Fame salesman who admitted later in life that after they got the coupons for the book, they would mail off the book, cash the check, and then throw the coupon away. And they never went back to the customer to do any back ending. The whole idea of the lifetime value of a customer is so naturally obscure in any entrepreneur's thinking because you're so focused on the front end sales. Right. Veteran marketers actually get to the point where they're willing to lose money on the first sale, where it doesn't matter till maybe the second, third, or fourth sale that they start seeing profit because they understand the lifetime value of that, which involves trust. You're essentially family. You essentially marry someone. I've been teaching marketing as a dating concept for a long time. From anything from let's go have coffee to let's get married. And the actual sales in there is somewhere around being engaged to be married. It's not on the first date or even the third date or 6 months into a relationship. There's a romance that has to go on. There's a sense that the person wants you in their life or your company or whatever it is that you represent, your brand essentially. How welcome are you in their life? And I've always taught that a good ad has to be the most important thing he's read today, has to be the thing that gets his blood moving, has to be that thing that hits him right between the eyes. And if he doesn't buy it right then he wakes up in the middle of the night and curses you as he reaches for his notes and finds out, where online you are and he's going to buy then. That stuff is missed by anybody who thinks that you can have a gentle relationship with your prospects and be able to make your business succeed. It's a jungle out there. Competitors know things you don't know. They're constantly undermining any effort you have. Technology is changing constantly. I've been counseling a lot of people whose big problem has been they don't know what their website looks like on mobile devices. So they're running around thinking their website looks great on their iMac at home on the desk, but you bring it up on your phone and it's unreadable. And there's no way to use the order page. And if you don't understand that a sudden drop of sales means something's going on, there's a leak somewhere, or something needs to be fixed, or there's a major problem. If you start blaming competition without looking into it, what are the competitors doing? A lot of entrepreneurs who were making huge money on information products 10 years ago, all of that stuff is given away free now as a bribe to get people just into other people's world. So trying to sell that stuff is a futile endeavor at this point because things keep changing. It was a wonderful world back in the aughts where it was a lot of low-hanging fruit. You could be the first entrepreneur to march into an online market where they'd never had anybody approach them and try to sell anything online. And what a novel thing it was. All that's gone. I don't think there's a single market left that isn't online. With huge competitors with more money, more resources, more people, bigger offices, huge advertising budgets are going up against you. However, when you have somebody's eyeballs on your email or your AdWords ad or your ad in a newspaper or whatever, or they're listening to you on the radio, at that point, it's just you and one human at a time, and that's your shot. You are equal to IBM at that point. Because if IBM comes on next on the radio, or their ad is right above yours, or they're the next click away in the Google search, it doesn't matter. Right then, for those seconds, you have the eyeball of your prospect. And what are you going to do with that? But you are equal at that time to the biggest competitor you have, and that's the advantage that a person steeped in direct response selling has.
Right. What would you say to people, that are considering new things? I mean, text messaging. Now we hear video, right? Video is supposed to be 70% of internet traffic, I think, this year. Yeah. Do the same principles apply?
Yeah, that was the big thing. There were a number of people who, when video sales letters came out, VSLs we call them, that was announced as the death of long copy. And I've been a long copy salesman. My advice about writing copy is the same as it is for a salesman. Your ad is your little tiny salesman sent out into the world to do the job that you are not going to be able to do face to face. So you start at the beginning of the pitch. You run through everything you need to do to get the trust, to start influencing them to take the action they need to do, to get the desire built up, to get them to act, to have that action happen so that money exchanges hands. And then you end it. And how long was it? Did it take, 20 pages? Then you got a 20-page ad. If don't try to trim it down to 10 under some idea that there's a magic number of words that people will read before they buy. They need to be convinced. How long will it take you to do that? The video sales letter came along and was the so-called death of long copy, because nobody wanted to read long stuff. Nobody wants to read a long, boring thing on anything. You don't want to read a long, boring novel or an article, or you don't want to listen to somebody talk who's boring. But if it's exciting and in your wheelhouse, then you will listen to it. So the video sales letters came out, and what they did was add another dimension of sense to the process. So rather than seeing an ad online and reading it, you are now hearing and also watching the visualization, either cartoons or somebody standing there talking to you, or visualizations or illustrations. And in the future, when the next iMac comes out with a little sniffer thing that shoots out, things you can smell, we'll use that too in marketing, but it won't change the process. It won't change the sales process. It'll be, hey, smell this. There'll be nothing magical about it. It will just engage the prospect on another sensory level. So I love doing VSLs. I was doing some of the first ones. As soon as, every single technological tactic became available and viable online, my colleagues and I tried it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have people who say that VSLs, video sales letters, transformed, got 10 times the response that a regular copy-laden page online got. Others report it was kind of a mix. So they would run the VSL and have the transcription of it underneath in a long 20-page letter. The average VSL, I think now, in direct response is still way over 20 minutes long, the average one for sale. And it's about 1 page of copy for a minute of video. So a 20-minute video is a 20-page letter, essentially.
Right.
So, so video is great. Texting, the thing about texting is that people forget where these things fall in the funnel or in the process. So I've written long emails that worked. But what I wanted it to work was, sometimes I've made sales from emails. More often, I've made it as a first step in a process, get them from the email to the blog page where the process continues, taking them to another page where the sale happens. Sometimes I've sold directly in an email. Click this link, it's taken to a buy page, and you're off to the races. A tweet, 140 characters, is more like an ad, a headline and a subhead. There's not a lot you can do in there except get them over. So the job of a tweet or the job of a text is to get them to the next step, which is to get them to the next step and then to the next step. So it's kind of like a series of doors you're ushering them through. So there's nothing magical about texting, nothing magical about a video. They're just tools in your toolkit to be able to use to bring in more people, different people, or to help the regular prospects you would be able to sell anyway get there faster, to get one step up on the competition. But new stores that open in town may get a lot of foot traffic right away, but it's because it's new and people will walk in. Just opening up a new store with a new way of branding and shiny, they're using neon instead of written signs as everybody else is doing. That's not going to make the sale. That may get you eyeballs for a period of time, but it's not going to close the deal. So. Right. It's like I tell entrepreneurs, I very often people come to me and they say, I need a quick way to make $1 million. Okay, rob a bank. There will be consequences, as there are consequences to setting up a business to make $1 million. Do you want to make $1 million over a year? You want to make it in a month? You want to make it over 5 years? What are you willing to do, and what do you know about the process that's going to happen? And are you willing to be that person who makes $1 million? That's a very different person than makes $100,000 with different habits, it's a different lifestyle. There's a lot of different things that go on. Whether you're robbing banks or whether you're using direct marketing or whether you're opening a storefront somewhere, there are ways to make it happen to any goal that you have.
Right.
Now, whether you're the person to do it or whether you need more resources or need to hire someone else, that's to be determined.
Right. So how do you decide how to mix up your writing? I mean, you come out with blog posts, but you're very active on Facebook. Do you have a plan? Do you write just when the fancy strikes you, and Facebook is just kind of your little muse to throw ideas out there, or how do you juggle those two?
Well, there's a mix, and I am actually changing my strategy this year. I'm going to be emailing my list more often. I did dabble in social media quite a bit over the last couple of years, and we sat down at the end of last year and did a numbers crunch. And it turns out that email pulls in 20 times the number of sales that social media does. So as a salesman, as a guy worried about the bottom line, Facebook just faded, in my estimation, as I've always suspected, as a primary way to bring in the moolah. I like the immediacy of it. I have I was maxed out on my page. What is the max? 5,000 people, and I've got another 5,000 following me. And I think I have 15,000 on Twitter, but I don't tweet anymore. I gave that up a while ago, so I don't know why people are still signing up on my Twitter. And of the 10,000 people supposedly as friends and followers on Facebook, I have no idea how many are actively engaging, because I don't know how many news feeds I show up on. Now, I could buy stuff, and we're certainly experimenting with that. I can buy eyeballs on Facebook, and a number of my colleagues are making money on Facebook. It's not an empty hole to throw money into necessarily. It's still new. There's still a lot of kinks to be worked out. And Facebook, Zuck is paying close attention to his legacy, more or less. Is he a news publisher? Is he just social media? Do they want to make money? A lot of stuff. He hasn't quite decided what he's going to be when he grows up and what Facebook is going to be when it grows up. But email has grown up, and email is an extension of direct mail, and it's still a primary way that people communicate. Facebook is tweeting is like going into a crowded party and just kind of running through, not, barely saying hi to people and just kind of blowing through and not staying long enough to have a conversation with anybody. Facebook is more like waltzing through a party. You're stopping, you're shucking and jiving, and you're talking to people, but you're moving on a lot, and there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of distraction. Email comes down to you and a pair of eyeballs looking at it. So if you know how to stop people in their tracks, email is still the way to go. And the process that I'm going to, and by the way, a lot of my Facebook tweets end up as email, almost verbatim, slight changes because I can put a link more easily in email, for example, than I can in Facebook. Facebook, kind of the comment, back and forth is kind of an integral part of it. And there's no feedback, of course, on email. Blogging is a difficult thing to keep going because of the way people's attention spans are really dropping. However, I just published a post that I repost every year in January about setting goals, and I think it's 10 years old at this point, this post, and I pretty much repost it with very few changes. It's a timeless post. But if you wrote it out, it would be probably about 8 to 10 pages long. And it still gets, it's read all the way through. It bumps the amount of time people's eyeballs are on the blog every time I publish it. So, the old thing is the vehicle you use to reach people, they don't care if it's a blog, if it's email, if it's Facebook. That they're not going to say, I'm not going to buy it because I saw it I got it from you on Facebook. If you're a stranger on Facebook, then all those other issues come. But if they trust you, if they know you, if they've had dealings with you, then the way you reach them, whether it's face-to-face, a phone call, some kind of media, or some kind of technological way, that becomes less important than the trust you built up, the structure of your offer, and how easy you've made it, and how much you've fixed a problem in their life or given them new hope that they can fix something themselves with the information or the tools that you give them. It's still just a jungle out there. I've told marketers often to go, if you want to see, what you're dealing with, go to the San Diego Zoo and hang out at the gorilla cage, because you'll watch for a while and you may think it's kind of interesting, but after a while you'll recognize Uncle Bob and George, the guy you work with. You recognize, all the foibles and everything going on. And, I don't think we're in a jungle. I think we have one foot in the proverbial jungle and one foot in the concrete jungle. And understanding the nature of the way the human mind works is integral to being a great salesman. The street salesman knew it without going to college, without understanding what the names were, the things that were understood, but they knew there was a primitive mindset. They knew about the emotional setup. They knew about the battle between the rational brain and the emotional brain. They knew all of that viscerally. Now we've been studying it for a while. We know where in the brain this stuff happens. We know We know the difference, the main difference between us and the animal kingdom is that slab of cerebral cortex, the extra brain that gave us language and thinking and the ability to think in future terms and things like that. But it's still sitting over atop a very, very primitive brain that still is, me want, me take, and, me not like you, me hit you. And we hide that. And civilization is fun, and I hope it continues. But, the battles to keep it going are amazing. I am stunned that civilization happens in spite of humans, tendency to want to destroy it. Somehow we've cobbled together a civilization that looks like it might last for a while. I have my fingers crossed.
So you're making an active shift to email, and I know that might hurt some people's brains, but you're not the only one. Do you know a guy named Justin Brook?
No, I do not.
All right, good guy out in Florida. He's a very smart guy, and he just left social media. He said he did the exact same analysis, and email was killing it. So he kept everything alive, but he's like, hey, I'm not going to be here. Go sign up for my email, join one of my groups, find me on Slack, but I'm going to spend my time where the money is. And so it's interesting to hear you say that, because I think we get a bit of an echo chamber online, and certainly in social media, and people, they can see that immediacy, and they can see people, hey, I'm crushing it over here because I mastered Twitter. And then people feel insignificant, right. Like, well, I'm not crushing it on Twitter. There must be something wrong with me. And then they just end up in this infinite loop, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, and back again. And they're afraid to send an email because every time I send a blast, I get 1 or 2 or 3 people that tell me to F off and whatever. And I'm like, dude, just hit unsubscribe. I didn't buy a list, right? You opted into my stuff at some point in the future or in the past. So just opt out. But people get their little feelers hurt, and then they don't make another offer.
Yeah, but you can't cache likes and retweets. So I think there's a balance. I'm not abandoning social media. I love Facebook. I like the immediacy of it. I like the feedback. The thing I like the most is the feedback part, the idea of the interaction, the comments section, essentially. So that has value. But as a sales tool, it has more limited value. Like I say, I have colleagues who are doing very well, but they're buying ads on Facebook, so they're buying eyeballs.
Oh, sure.
So
you have to. It's a pay-to-play world now on social media.
I was the guy that first started burying my links to my blog, a free blog, but I was being punished by Facebook for saying, hey, I got a new blog post. Here it is. Go over here and read it. Anything that takes you off of Facebook is frowned upon by the Facebook algorithm, and they will crush you. Yeah. So I started putting the link in the first comment, and that worked for a while. And then a lot of my colleagues picked it up, and they started using it. And now that's not working. So I put it in the third comment, and that seems to be working a little bit. But, it's not entirely worth trying to fight Zuck and his crew on this. But to use Facebook as one of the tools in my kit for engagement, even though I'm getting 20 to 1 on email, I'm still getting the 1 from social media. So, it's and a lot of that stuff you had asked me, and I don't think I answered it properly. A lot of the stuff can be cross-pollinated. I can take blog posts and put them into Facebook posts. I can take Facebook posts and put them on my blog. I can put them into emails. And I do often use the same almost identical post from Facebook in my email for like announcing blog posts or certain things, because I'm talking to the same audience. So there's a lot of ways these things are intertwined. I think the problem with social media is it's not easy to make the sale, to get people to actually get to a sales page where the sale can go down, and they are actively fighting direct marketers. Now, email also fights direct marketers with, you can be sent to spam filters. You have to be careful. You can be blackballed by your email, the service provider, if he thinks you're sending spam, or if he gets too many complaints, or the unsubscribes get too high. There's dangers in everything, including alphabet federal agencies that are snooping a lot around. But if you're an ethical, good marketer, the only type I like to deal with, then a lot of these problems aren't there unless you cause them. You start saying, free stuff available in your subject line in an email, and then it's not free at all in your line. Well, you're going to get crushed by the market and other agencies out there, and deservedly so. So just don't do that. Don't do the stuff that causes problems.
Oh, now you tell me. So that free Viagra that leads to joining my sales training course, that was the wrong approach?
There were so many people that fell in love with that kind of stuff, that feint, that free sex in a subject line. Then just kidding, just wanted to get your that comes from old classified ads, again in the Los Angeles Times back in the 60s.
Right.
There's very few tactics that are new. There are new vehicles and new ways to use those tactics. So it's good to stay hip. But the history, for me, understanding history is the way to have a better life, to have a better business, to have a better lifestyle. I think history is primary, both in whatever business you're in. You should understand the history of it, what's been tried, what hasn't. In politics, you should know what's been tried, how it worked, what failed and what didn't. Yep. In personal relationships, in every aspect of life, understanding the history of things just makes for a better way to go. And people don't like history. So that's an advantage for any entrepreneur who cares to pick up an 80-year-old book and see what Claude Hopkins has to say about sales. Right. And to poo-poo it like your 19-year-old son is the default reaction that most people have. That 1% that doesn't have it are the ones who will thrive.
Right. So you mentioned, cross-pollinating or reusing. I've asked this question a bunch of my guests. And, what percentage would you recommend to somebody on creating new versus sticking with what worked and just promoting the heck out of it? Because I think most people think they have to spend more time producing, and they really don't spend enough time just promoting the heck out of themselves.
I just had a consulting client that we went over this very stuff, and he, like a lot of entrepreneurs, he was just very entranced by shiny new objects. And every time, in fact, I call it the first rule of entrepreneurship. The first thing an entrepreneur does after making a simple, elegant idea work, his next step unconsciously is to try to screw that up by complicating things and creating obstacles for his own progress. And a lot of that has to do with new stuff. The old direct mail problem that copywriters had was a client would get tired of the ad, and this was both for direct mail and for ads that ran in publications. The client would get tired of the ad about 2 to 3 years before the public would. So, the client's seen it, he's tired of it, his wife's tired of it. People joke with him at dinner, when he goes out to dinner with friends, and he thinks that's old stuff. The good marketers look at it and say, is it still working? And he'll say, well, yeah, it's still pulling it. Then don't change the ad. No. Change the ad when results start dropping in a predictable way. Like you start getting half that, and then it starts becoming, when it gets down to break even or just above break even, then you need a new ad.
Right.
Until then, Run the heck out of that thing. It's the same thing with any kind of process you have. You got a good business. You're selling something. You got a back end. You have a back end to the back end. You have a relationship that you built up. Maybe you have some coaching available. You have one high price thing. Maybe it's a seminar you give every 3 months, or it's something that's a high price. So you understand that you can, most of your sales are around $39. There's a number of back end things you have for like $100 to $500, and you have one large item like $5,000 or $15,000 that you're selling. That's a pretty darn good funnel right there. It's nice and simple. You can handle it. Most people get tired of that and they start thinking, I got to progress. They get shiny. They start a membership site. They bring on partners. They start trying to up their game, and some do it successfully. Most don't.
Right.
And you have to remember that most successful entrepreneurs have failed. They are the successful ones are serial entrepreneurs. They take good ideas, they make them work, then they self-sabotage them, or something goes wrong. Or the smart ones learn to sell the thing before they get bored and start messing with it. So if you got a business that's going, or a funnel that's working, and you're bored, remove yourself from it. Hire somebody to take it over, sell the business, do something, and go start something else. Because maybe you're that type of entrepreneur who gets really excited about the ideas and the newness and making it work and taking something as a challenge and, making it work. And then you get bored when it comes down to being a manager. An entrepreneurs seldom make good managers of things. So you just naturally want to screw it up. That doesn't work in marriage, doesn't work in politics, doesn't work in business. So learn your lesson as soon as possible. It may take you one or two shots. For a lot of us, I have to learn my lessons over and over and over again. There's no one master lesson where, I got it. Now I'm all sensible and a wise old man. That never happens. And in fact, the more confident you get that you got this thing nailed, the more likely reality is going to come and bite you in the butt. So that brings us to about an hour, Wes. I have to excuse myself here in about 5 minutes. So.
Sure. I was going to say that. So the synopsis of that is, spend a lot more time promoting and less time worrying about making some new widget, especially if the new widget is still selling.
That's right. The shiny new objects will attract your attention. Just understand your natural tendency to follow those shiny objects into oblivion. Yep. And, make sure you cement the good parts down. Build up your home base and make sure that's working on autopilot, and then go play. Give yourself a budget if you want to play with something. $10,000. I'm going to put $10,000 in this new little project I have, and after that, if it's not making money, I'm going to say goodbye to it. Okay. Easy way around.
All right, last question. And I like to ask this of my guests. Imagine that our listeners are, they're on a plane, they're jogging, they can't do something right this second. But as soon as they get to their desk, as soon as they get to where they can write something down or make a phone call or write an email, what should they do to move in the right direction as a result of listening to this podcast?
Well, they should go to my blog, john-carlton.com. It's over 10 years old. There's archives. It's free. The archives alone are an education, but there's a few things they can grab if they want. I have very cheap books. I have $2 books on Amazon. I think the ebook is Success Secrets No One Told You About, I believe. There's another book you can get. There's a couple of courses. I recommend the Simple Writing System for anyone who struggles with writing. Yep. And you need writing. Nothing gets done until the copy gets written. That's my mantra. Nothing important gets done until the copy is written. Whether it's for a video, it's a manuscript, whether it's a script for selling on the phone or face-to-face, whether it's an ad, something has to be written down. And you have to understand the nature of writing an ad. And the Simple Writing System has been a lifesaver for a lot of people who were afraid of writing, who thought they had writer's block, who didn't understand the process, who thought you just sat down and waited for inspiration to come. It's just a step-by-step, very simple process of figuring out who you're writing to, what your message is, how to make that message not just palatable, but the most important thing that they read or hear or see today, and move along. So that is certainly something I would urge people to look at. It's all available. The blog is like a little wonderland. You hop on it, and there are things to explore all over the place.
Yep.
So certainly the current January post is very important to people's lives if you're worried about planning for the year ahead. And all of the posts preceding it, going back 10 years, are all very important to an entrepreneur's positive lifestyle. So that would be my recommendation.
Right. Yeah, we'll link to everything as well so they can find that easily. All right,
Great.
man. John Carlton, thank you, sir. Coming on the Sales Podcast. It's been great.
Wes, glad to do it. Have a great day.
All right, man. You too. Hey, I hope you got some good stuff out of that. I was re-listening to this as I was preparing the show notes and the intro and the outro. And, I mean, he is just full of wisdom. And it's so cool he agreed to come on. I mean, this is a good guy. You know, I'm not super famous. And, we spent a full hour and didn't hold anything back. So I'll link to everything if you visit thesaleswhisperer.com/session229. I linked to everything that we talked about, his website, Marketing Rebel, Psych Insight for Modern Marketers, Simple Writing System, so all those good things. And, avail yourself of his information. He is very generous. He has been active on social media. I think he'll be less active, but his blog is still very good. It's free. And again, he doesn't hold back there. And, consider investing as well in some of his programs. I've got some of his books as well. They're all good. So surround yourself with proven people. A lot of these flashy guys you see now, these young guys, these young bulls, all right, young bucks, they are just implementing some new technology, but they're deploying the stuff that John talks about and has done in many other mediums. Okay, so you're doing yourself a solid by listening to this. If you haven't already, you can do me a solid and subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Okay, maybe you stumbled across this. Maybe you're listening to it online. But if you can go to iTunes or Google and actually subscribe, that helps this podcast get bubbled up, helps more people find it. The more that listen, the more I can serve, the more I can do for free. Okay, so help me help you, and subscribing is a big way to help. Another way is to try out my sponsor. Check out Jay Hunter and his crew at VA Staffer. So thesaleswhisperer.com/VA Staffer. And you get 4 free hours with them with their assistance. And then if you decide to retain them, they're super affordable. They still give you $100 off of that because you're a listener to this podcast. Okay? So thanks for listening. Have a great week. And remember to sell different.